They said it made 430 horsepower. That's what the brochure claimed. That's what buyers saw. But here's the thing. That number wasn't just wrong. It was a lie. Because the 1967 Chevrolet Corvette L88 wasn't built to impress people on paper. It was built for something else entirely. And the people who understood that, they didn't buy it for the street. They bought it to win. To understand the L88, you have to step back into the mid-1960s. This was the golden age of American muscle. Horsepower numbers were climbing, engines were getting bigger, and every manufacturer wanted to dominate both the streets and the track. And at the center of it all was Chevrolet, specifically the Corvette. By 1967, the Corvette had already built a reputation. It was fast, it was stylish, and it carried the image of American performance. But there was a problem. Chevrolet had an official policy: no factory-backed racing. On paper, they weren't allowed to build race cars. But in reality, they never stopped trying. And that's where the L88 comes in. Here's the strange part. If Chevrolet wanted to build the most powerful Corvette possible, why would they deliberately understate its horsepower? Why would they make it harder to buy? Why would they strip comfort features out of a premium sports car? And why did so few people even know what it really was? Because the L88 wasn't designed for the average buyer. It was designed to slip under the radar. At the time, most Corvette buyers wanted a balance. They wanted speed, comfort, style. They didn't want a car that was difficult to drive, uncomfortable, and borderline impractical. But Chevrolet engineers were thinking differently. They weren't asking, what will customers enjoy? They were asking, what will win races? And those two goals don't always align. Because when you build a car purely for performance, you start making trade-offs that most people wouldn't accept. And the L88 pushed those trade-offs to the extreme. Let's start with the heart of the car. Under the hood sat a 427 cubic inch V8, part of Chevrolet's big block engine family. On paper, it was rated at 430 horsepower. But that number doesn't make sense when you look closer. The L88 used high compression pistons, around 12.5 to 1, a solid lifter camshaft, aluminum cylinder heads, a massive Holley carburetor. These weren't mild upgrades, these were race-level components. Engines with similar setups were producing well over 500 horsepower. So why list it at 430? Because insurance companies were watching. Because emissions regulations were tightening. Because Chevrolet didn't want attention. Underrating the engine made the car look less extreme than it really was. But once you drove it, the truth was impossible to hide. Here's something most people don't realize. The L88 wasn't just powerful, it was difficult. It didn't idle smoothly. It didn't behave like a normal street car. In fact, it barely tolerated street driving at all. The engine was tuned for high RPM performance, not low-speed comfort. That meant rough idle, poor drivability in traffic, constant need for high-octane fuel. And not just any fuel. The L88 required 103-octane racing fuel to run properly. That's not something you casually fill up with on your way home. And then there's what Chevrolet removed. To make the car lighter and more focused, they eliminated heater, radio, air conditioning. Even the fan shroud was modified for better cooling under race conditions. Think about that. You're buying one of the most expensive Corvettes available, and it comes with fewer features than a base model. That alone confused buyers. But here's the key. Chevrolet didn't want casual buyers choosing the L88. They wanted racers, people who understood what they were getting into. So instead of advertising it aggressively, they quietly made it available. If you knew, you knew. If you didn't, you'd probably walk right past it. Now, here's where things take an interesting turn. Despite all its capability, the L88 wasn't immediately recognized for what it was. Many buyers avoided it. Some thought it was overpriced. Others thought it was too extreme. And because of the underrated horsepower figure, some didn't realize how powerful it actually was. In 1967, only 20 L88 Corvettes were built. 20. That's not just rare, that's almost invisible. And at the time, nobody could have predicted what those 20 cars would eventually become. But the people who did understand the L88, they took it to the track. And that's where everything changed. Once unleashed in racing conditions, the L88 showed its true identity. It wasn't just fast, it was dominant. Cars equipped with the L88 engine began winning, not just locally, but at major endurance events. The combination of raw power, lightweight setup, race-focused engineering made it incredibly competitive. And suddenly, what looked like an odd, stripped-down Corvette turned out to be one of the most capable performance machines Chevrolet had ever built. The underrated horsepower figure? Irrelevant. The lack of comfort? Intentional. Everything about the L88 made sense, once you saw it doing what it was built to do. Today, the 1967 L88 Corvette is considered one of the most valuable and respected Corvettes ever made. Not because of how many were sold, not because of how comfortable it was, but because of what it represented. It was a car built with a singular purpose. No compromise, no distraction, just performance. And that clarity of purpose is rare. In a world where most products try to appeal to everyone, the L88 did the opposite. It was unapologetically focused. And because of that, it became legendary. Imagine owning one today. You wouldn't drive it to the grocery store. You wouldn't sit in traffic with it. You'd treat it like what it is, a piece of engineering intent. Something that reminds you of a time when performance mattered more than comfort. Sometimes the most powerful machines aren't the ones that shout the loudest. They're the ones built quietly, for those who know exactly what they're looking at. So yeah, they said it made 430 horsepower. That's what the numbers claimed, but the truth was never in the numbers. Because the 1967 L88 Corvette wasn't built to impress on paper. It was built to prove itself where it mattered, and once it did, there was no hiding what it really was.